Welcome to my channel Deep Sleep Mission-DSM. As we begin, I would be delighted if you could share your location in the comments below. It's truly inspiring to witness how far this content travels and to connect with viewers from across the world. The GPS died at exactly 11:47 p.m. Not gradually, not with a warning, just black, dead. Like someone had reached through the screen and switched off reality itself. I should have turned back right then, should have listened to that cold twist in my gut. But Bridgewater was only 12 miles away, and I'd driven these Massachusetts back roads 100 times before. What could possibly go wrong? Before I tell you what happened that October night, before I explain why I'll never drive through Bridgewater again, I need you to understand something. What you're about to hear isn't some campfire tale. This happened 3 weeks ago, and if you live anywhere near southeastern Massachusetts, you need to know what's happening out there. Because the triangle, it's not staying where it's supposed to anymore. Hit that subscribe button if you want to hear more stories like this. And please, if you've experienced something similar, leave a comment below. I need to know I'm not alone in this. Now, let the story begin. The leaves were doing that New England thing, you know, where they crunch under your tires like tiny bones breaking. I'd left Boston around 10:30, later than planned. My sister Sarah had called earlier that day, something in her voice that made my skin crawl. Just come home, okay? Tonight, please. She lived in Raynham, right on the edge of what locals whispered about but never discussed openly. The Bridgewater Triangle. 200 square miles of Massachusetts that shouldn't exist the way it does. But growing up there, you learn to live with the strange. You learn to look the other way when shadows move wrong. You learn not to ask questions about the sounds in the Hockomock Swamp. The radio was playing that new Taylor Swift song when it happened. 1 second, clear reception. The next, static, but not normal static. It had a pattern to it. Like breathing, like something massive was inhaling and exhaling through the speakers. I reached over to change the station, nothing but that breathing static on every frequency, even the emergency broadcast channel, especially the emergency broadcast channel. That's when I noticed the other cars, or the lack of them. Route 44 is never empty. Never. It's the main artery between Providence and Plymouth. Even at midnight, you'll see truckers, late-night commuters, teenagers heading home from parties. But for the last 5 minutes, nothing. Just me, my dying Honda Civic, and that breathing static. The temperature gauge on my dashboard read 34 degrees. October in Massachusetts, nothing unusual, but I could see my breath. Inside the car, with the heat on full blast. Then the GPS flickered back to life. For just a second, long enough to show my location. I wasn't on Route 44 anymore. According to the screen, I was in the middle of the Hockomock Swamp, 3 miles from the nearest road. But I could see the asphalt under my headlights, could feel the solid yellow lines as my tires drifted slightly left. The GPS died again, this time for good. That's when I saw the first one. Standing in the middle of the road, maybe 50 yards ahead. At first I thought, deer. Massachusetts is lousy with deer. They'll stand in your headlights like they're posing for a portrait, completely oblivious to 2 tons of metal barreling toward them. But deer don't stand on 2 legs, and they definitely don't wave. I slammed the brakes. The Civic skidded, fishtailed slightly, stopped maybe 20 feet from the figure. My high beams lit it up like a stage spotlight, and I wished they hadn't. It looked like someone had tried to draw a person from memory, after forgetting what people actually looked like. The proportions were off, arms too long, torso too short, and the face. Have you ever seen a mask that's almost human but not quite? That uncanny valley thing that makes your brain scream wrong, wrong, wrong? That was this thing's actual face. like skin stretched over a framework that didn't quite match human bone structure. It waved again, slow, deliberate, the way you'd wave to a friend across a parking lot. Casual, familiar. Then it smiled, too many teeth. Way too many teeth. I threw the car in reverse, didn't even look behind me, just floored it backward into the darkness. The thing didn't chase, didn't move at all, just stood there, waving and smiling until the darkness swallowed it whole. When I finally stopped, hands shaking so bad I could barely grip the wheel, I realized something that made my blood turn to slush. The road behind me. It wasn't the road I'd driven down. The yellow lines were gone, the asphalt had turned to packed dirt, and the trees, Massachusetts pines and oaks, had been replaced by something else, something with bark that seemed to pulse in my headlights, something with branches that moved without wind. I was still in my car, still in Massachusetts, but I wasn't in my Massachusetts anymore. The triangle had expanded, and I was inside it. My phone had no signal. The clock on the dashboard had stopped at 11:47. And somewhere in the darkness, I could hear footsteps. Not walking, not running, dancing. Something was dancing in the dark, just beyond the reach of my headlights, and it was getting closer. I did the only thing that made sense. I drove. Didn't matter which direction. Forward was away from the waving thing, and that was good enough for me. The dirt road wound through those wrong trees like a snake's spine, and my headlights kept catching things that shouldn't exist. A mailbox, normal enough, except the name on it changed every time I looked. Peterson, Rodriguez, Kim, Thompson, all different handwriting, all fresh paint. A stop sign that was octagonal on one side, triangular when I passed it. A house, just one. Sitting perfect and pristine like it had been cut from a 1950s magazine and pasted into this nightmare. White picket fence, porch swing moving in the no wind, and every single window glowing with that warm, honey-colored light that meant family and safety and home. I almost stopped. God help me. I almost stopped. The urge was like a fishhook in my chest, pulling me toward that front door. But then I saw the shadows moving inside. Too tall, too angular, and they were all looking out, all of them, pressed against the windows like kids watching for Santa, watching me. I kept driving. The dirt road became gravel, then asphalt again, then something that looked like road but felt wrong under my tires, too soft, like driving over flesh. The trees started thinning out and I thought, finally, I'm getting out of this. That's when I saw the other cars, 7 of them, all different makes and models but all with Massachusetts plates, all parked in a perfect circle in what looked like a rest stop that shouldn't exist. A rest stop with vending machines that hummed too loud and bathrooms with doors that didn't quite close and fluorescent lights that made everything look sick and green. I pulled in. Don't ask me why. Maybe because seeing other cars meant seeing other people. Maybe because being alone in this wrong place was worse than whatever might be waiting in that circle. The first car, a blue Subaru, still had its engine running. Door open. Radio playing that same breathing static. There was a coffee cup on the dashboard. Steam still rising from it. Fresh. Maybe 5 minutes old. The second car had toys in the back. Those little screens kids watch videos on during long drives. Both still playing. Same video, same timestamp. 3:33, over and over. I was checking the third car when I heard the voice. "You're new." I spun around so fast I nearly fell. A woman stood there. Normal looking, thank God. 30s maybe. Red sock sweatshirt, jeans, the kind of person you'd see at Market Basket buying groceries. "I'm Lisa," she said. "Been here 3 hours, maybe 4. Time's weird." Where is here?" She laughed, not a happy sound. "The expanded zone, that's what Tom calls it. The triangle's not a triangle anymore. It's reaching out. grabbing roads, pulling them in, like a spiderweb made of geography. "Tom?" She pointed to a man sitting on the hood of a pickup truck. Older, maybe 60. He was staring at something in his hands. As I got closer, I realized it was a compass. The needle was spinning, not pointing north, not pointing anywhere, just spinning and spinning like it was trying to escape. "Started 3 weeks ago," Tom said, without looking up. "Small at first. A road here, a street there, but it's growing. Every night it takes a little more. How do we get out?" Tom finally looked at me. His eyes were tired. So tired. "We don't. We wait. Sometimes it lets people go. Sometimes it doesn't. Sarah made it out yesterday." My blood froze. "Sarah? Sarah Winters?" "Yeah. Skinny girl, brown hair. Kept talking about her brother coming to get her. But Sarah was at home. Sarah had called me. Sarah had, oh God, the thing in my sister's voice, the wrongness I'd heard but ignored. She hadn't made it out, something else had. Something wearing her voice like a costume. And it had called me here. Lisa was still talking, but I wasn't listening anymore. Because behind her, in the darkness beyond the sick green lights, I could see them. Dozens of them. All standing perfectly still. All watching. All smiling with too many teeth, and they were all waving. "There are others," Tom said, noticing my stare. "Been here longer. Some much longer." He gestured toward the far edge of the rest stop, where I could barely make out another figure sitting on a bench that hadn't been there moments before. This one looked different. Older, wearing clothes that seemed dated. "That's Marcus. Been here since 19... Says he was driving home from a Celtics game when the roads changed. Still thinks it's the 80s. Tom's voice dropped to a whisper. "Sometimes the zone, it doesn't just grab you. It grabs when you were, pulls you out of time itself." I approached Marcus slowly. He looked up as I got closer, and I saw he was holding a newspaper. The Boston Globe, dated October 15th, 1987. The headlines were about the stock market crash, Reagan's policies, but the paper looked fresh, like it had been printed that morning. "You see them too?" Marcus asked, his voice carrying a thick Boston accent that sounded authentic to the era. "The waving people? Yeah. They used to be different. Back when I first got here, more wild, primal, like they hadn't learned to mimic us yet. But every year, they get better, more convincing." He folded his newspaper with hands that shook slightly. "The first ones I saw barely looked human. Now they're almost perfect copies." Lisa had followed me over. "Marcus has theories," she said. "Tell him about the experiments." Marcus's eyes lit up with the fervor of someone who'd had decades to piece together a puzzle. "You ever hear of Project Blue Book? Government investigation into UFOs back in the 50s and 60s. Official story says it ended in 69, but what if it didn't? What if they just moved it underground?" He pointed toward the darkness where the waving thing stood. "Bridgewater's been a hot spot for aerial phenomena since the 1700s. Ghost lights, unidentified aircraft. The Wampanoag called it Hockomock. Place where spirits dwell. But what if they weren't spirits? What are you saying?" "I'm saying maybe the triangle isn't expanding naturally. Maybe something's been feeding it, studying it, using it." Marcus's voice dropped even lower. "I've seen things over the years. Black helicopters with no markings, men in suits taking soil samples, and always, the zone gets a little bigger afterward." Tom walked over, compass still spinning in his hands. "Marcus has been tracking the expansions. Every incident, every road that gets swallowed. There's a pattern." Marcus pulled out a hand-drawn map from his jacket. The paper was yellowed with age, covered in red ink marks and dates. It showed Massachusetts, but not the Massachusetts I knew. This version had the Bridgewater Triangle marked in different colors, showing its growth over the decades. Started here, he pointed to a small red dot. 1947, same year as Roswell, coincidentally. Then it grew in spurts in 63, 1978, 1987 when I got caught, 95, 2003, 2011, and now it's accelerating. The map was horrifying in its implications. The original triangle had been maybe 50 square miles. Now, according to Marcus's careful documentation, it encompassed nearly 300 square miles and was still growing. But here's the really scary part, Marcus continued. It's not random. Look at the dates. Look at what else was happening those years. He was right. 1947, Roswell. 1963, JFK assassination, height of Cold War paranoia. 1978, end of official Blue Book investigations. Each expansion seemed to correspond with major events in government UFO research. You think the government is behind this? I asked. Not behind it, Marcus said, but maybe feeding it. Maybe they found something here in 1947 and have been studying it ever since. Maybe every time they poke it, prod it, try to understand it, it gets hungrier. A new voice cut through our conversation. Female, young, terrified. Please, somebody help me. We turned to see a teenager stumbling into the rest stop's sickly green light. Maybe 17, wearing a Bridgewater State University sweatshirt. Her eyes were wild, unfocused. She'd been running. They took my friends, she gasped. They took Jenny and Mike and they're wearing their faces. Lisa was already moving, guiding the girl to sit down. What's your name, honey? Emma Rodriguez. We were coming back from a party in Middleborough. The GPS said to take a shortcut through some back roads and then... She broke down, sobbing into her hands. Tom and I exchanged looks. Another lure. Another trap, using familiar technology to guide people into the zone. How long ago? Tom asked gently. Maybe an hour, I don't know. Time keeps jumping. 1 second it was midnight, then suddenly it was 3 a.m., then back to midnight again. Marcus nodded grimly. Time distortion. Gets worse the deeper in you go. They looked exactly like Jenny and Mike at first, Emma continued. But then Jenny smiled and she had shark teeth, rows and rows of them, and Mike's eyes were black. Not brown like they should be, completely black. She looked up at us with desperate hope. You guys are real, right? You're not them? We're real, Lisa assured her. As real as anything gets in here. But I noticed Tom had moved slightly away from the group. His compass had stopped spinning and was now pointing directly at Emma. His face had gone pale. Tom, I called. He held up the compass for us to see. It only points to things that don't belong, he whispered. Things that aren't what they seem. Emma's head snapped up. The terror in her eyes was replaced by something else, something cold and calculating. And when she smiled, too many teeth. Way too many teeth. You're getting so much better at this, she said in a voice that sounded like Emma but felt wrong. But not quite good enough. The thing wearing Emma's face stood up slowly. As it did, its proportions began to shift. Arms lengthening, torso compacting. The Bridgewater State sweatshirt stretching and distorting as the body underneath changed shape. Run, Tom whispered. We scattered. Different directions, different cars. I heard Lisa's engine roar to life behind me as I dove into my Honda. In my rearview mirror, I could see the Emma thing standing in the center of the rest stop, no longer bothering to maintain its human disguise. It had become something angular and wrong, with too many joints and skin that looked like it had been stretched over a frame built for something else entirely. But it wasn't alone anymore. The waving things were moving in from the darkness. Dozens of them. And some looked familiar. I caught a glimpse of what might have been Jenny, what might have been Mike, what might have been people who'd been caught over the years, their forms stolen and replicated by things that were learning to be human. My car's engine turned over on the third try. Thank God. I floored it toward the road, any road that might lead out of this nightmare. Behind me, I could hear other engines starting. Tom's truck, Lisa's sedan. We were all trying to escape, but in different directions. The wrong trees blurred past my windows as I drove deeper into the zone. Deeper into whatever this place was becoming. My headlights caught movement in the forest. Dozens of figures keeping pace with my car, all waving, all smiling, all wearing faces I was starting to recognize. Tom grabbed my arm before I could run. His grip was stronger than an old man's should be. Don't. Running makes it worse. Trust me, I tried. What are they? Nobody knows. But they've always been here, in the triangle. Native Americans called this place Hockomock, where the spirits dwell. They knew. They stayed away. But we built roads through it, towns around it. And now it's expanding, Lisa finished. Taking back what we took, plus interest. The waving things hadn't moved, just stood there in the dark, patient as death. But there were more of them now. Lots more. There's a pattern, Tom said, still gripping my arm. Every few hours the road opens up, goes back to normal for maybe 10 minutes. That's how Sarah, or whatever took Sarah, got out. But you have to time it perfect. Leave too early, you drive deeper in. Leave too late. He didn't finish. Didn't need to. Lisa checked her watch. Should be soon, maybe 20 minutes. 20 minutes. I could last 20 minutes. Had to last 20 minutes. But then what? Go home to whatever was pretending to be my sister? Call the cops and sound insane? Others have gotten out, Lisa said, like she was reading my mind. They try to warn people, post about it online, but who believes them? Sounds like every other creepypasta, right? Like fiction. She was right. Even living it, I barely believed it. The fluorescent lights started flickering. Tom's compass needle stopped spinning, pointed straight up. Impossible, but there it was. Get ready, he whispered. The waving things moved closer, not walking, just closer. Like reality hiccuped and they jumped forward in the gap. Their smiles never changed. Their hands never stopped waving. Why are they waving? I heard myself ask. Tom's answer made my skin crawl off my bones. They're not waving. They're beckoning. The lights went out. In the absolute darkness, I could hear them. All of them. Moving now, fast. That dancing sound I'd heard earlier. Not dancing. Skittering, like insects, like things with too many joints moving in ways that violated physics. Then, headlights. Real headlights. From the road that suddenly existed where no road had been before. Route 44, clear as day, with actual cars driving past like nothing was wrong. Now! Tom shouted. We ran for our cars. All of us. I didn't look back. Couldn't look back. But I could hear them behind us, hundreds of them, their feet, God, the sound of their feet on the pavement. I yanked my door open, dove inside, turned the key. The engine roared to life. Thank you, thank you, thank you. In my rearview mirror, I saw Lisa's car speeding toward the road. Tom's truck right behind her, and behind them. The things had stopped at the edge of the light. All of them. Standing in a perfect line like soldiers. Still waving, still smiling, but not following. I floored it onto Route 44. Real road. Real yellow lines. Real streetlights. The clock on my dashboard blinked back to life. 2:23 a.m. I'd lost almost 3 hours. But I was out. I was free. My phone buzzed. Text message. From Sarah. "Where are you? I'm worried." Then another. "Please come home." Another. "I'm so cold." I pulled over at the next gas station. Well lit. Crowded. Safe. My hands shook as I called Sarah's number. It rang once, twice. "Hello?" Her voice. Perfect. Normal. Completely wrong. "Sarah? Oh, thank God. Where have you been? I've been calling for hours. You told me to come home." Silence. Long silence. "No," she said finally. "I didn't." The thing is, I believed her. The real Sarah, wherever she was, hadn't called me. Something else had. Something that knew my number, knew my name, knew exactly what to say to get me on that road. "Don't come home," Sarah whispered. "Please, just don't come home." The line went dead. I'm still at this gas station, been here 3 hours now. I've seen 4 cars pull off Route 44 with that same haunted look, that same shake in their hands. We don't talk to each other. We can't. Because talking about it makes it real, but I had to tell someone. Had to warn you. The Bridgewater Triangle isn't a triangle anymore. It's spreading. Every night, it takes a little more. A road here, a street there, and the things inside it, they're learning. Getting better at mimicking us, at luring us in. Check your GPS next time it glitches. Count the cars on empty roads. Listen to the static on your radio. And if someone you love calls you late at night asking you to come home, ask them something only they would know. Make sure it's really them, because the triangle is expanding. And eventually, it's going to reach you too. I never made it home that night. I stayed in that gas station until dawn, watching the sun come up like it was the first sunrise ever created. Other people came and went. Normal people living normal lives, completely unaware of what was happening just a few miles down the road. I called Sarah when the sun was fully up. The real Sarah this time. She was confused but fine, said she'd been asleep all night, no calls, no texts, but when I asked her to check her phone, there they were. Outgoing calls to my number. Messages she never sent. We don't talk about it. What's the point? But she moved last week to California, as far from Massachusetts as she could get. I should probably do the same. Leave this state. Leave New England entirely. But I can't. Because every night I drive past that stretch of Route 44, looking for others who've been caught, warning people when I can. Most think I'm crazy. Some local conspiracy theorist with too much time on his hands. But occasionally someone's eyes go wide. Someone nods. Someone knows. 3 days ago, I found Lisa at a Dunkin' Donuts in Taunton. She'd made it out too, but something was wrong with her. She kept checking her reflection in windows like she wasn't sure it was really her looking back. "I dream about them," she told me over coffee that had gone cold in her shaking hands. "Every night, the waving things. But in the dreams, I'm one of them. I'm standing in that line beckoning to cars, and I can feel how hungry they are, how patient. She hasn't been the same since. None of us have. Tom's been harder to find. I've driven past his house in Raynham a dozen times, but it's always dark. Neighbors say he hasn't been home since that night. Some think he went back in. Others say they've seen him driving the back roads at night, warning people away from certain streets. Marcus is still in there. Has to be. 37 years in the expanded zone. I wonder if he's still himself, or if the things finally learned to wear his face too. But the worst part? The absolute worst part? It's still growing. I've been mapping it, like Marcus did. Every incident report, every missing person case in southeastern Massachusetts, every GPS glitch and radio anomaly, The pattern is accelerating. Last week, a whole section of Route 138 disappeared for 6 hours. State police found it the next morning, but 17 cars were missing. They turned up eventually, abandoned in the Hockomock Swamp, with their engines still running and their doors wide open. The official explanation was a gas leak causing mass hallucinations. Mass hysteria. But I know better. We all know better. The triangle isn't just expanding randomly anymore. It's targeting, learning, adapting. And the things inside, they're getting bolder. Yesterday I saw one at a McDonald's in Brockton, just sitting there eating a Big Mac with 2 long fingers, smiling at kids with too many teeth. No one else noticed, no one else cared, but I could see it for what it really was. They're not staying in the zone anymore. They're coming out, walking among us, learning to be us. If you're watching this from Massachusetts, from anywhere in New England, pay attention. Watch for the signs. That GPS glitch, that empty road, that breathing static. And whatever you do, whatever you hear, whoever calls you, don't drive through Bridgewater at night. The triangle isn't done expanding. And those things, the waving things, they're still out there, still watching, still beckoning, still smiling with too many teeth. Sweet dreams, everyone. If you can still sleep after this, you're braver than me. Hit subscribe if you want to hear more true stories from New England. Leave a comment if you've experienced something similar. We need to map this thing, need to understand how far it's spread, and please share this with anyone you know in Massachusetts. They need to be warned. The triangle is growing, and it's hungry. Story number 2. The bartender's hand froze halfway to the bottle of Jack Daniels when I mentioned the room number. His eyes darted to the hotel keycard lying on the mahogany bar, then back to me. You're not actually staying in 1408, are you? I wish I could tell you this was just another ghost story, something to make you check under your bed tonight. But what happened in that room? What's still happening in rooms just like it across America? Well, let me ask you something first. Have you ever noticed how every major hotel chain has a room 1408? And have you ever wondered why they're always available, even during peak season? Before you answer, before you dismiss this as coincidence, I need you to promise me something. If you ever find yourself holding a key card to room 1408, any room 1408, anywhere in this country, just walk away. Trust me on this. The story begins now. My name is Marcus Chen, and until 3 weeks ago, I was a travel blogger specializing in haunted hotels across America. You know the type. Skeptical journalist seeks thrills in supposedly cursed rooms, debunks local legends, gets 1 million views, rinse and repeat. The email came on a Tuesday morning while I was nursing a hangover in a Best Western outside Tulsa. The subject line simply read, "The 1408 Pattern, Confidential Investigation Opportunity." The sender claimed to be a data analyst named Sarah Winters, who discovered something disturbing. Every major hotel chain in America, Hilton, Marriott, Holiday Inn, Best Western, they all had a room 1408. Not just in one location, but in exactly one hotel per state. 50 states, 50 rooms, all numbered 1408. That's not the weird part, her email continued. The weird part is what happens when you overlay the occupancy data. She'd attached a spreadsheet, hundreds of entries, dates, names, incident reports. The pattern was subtle at first, but once you saw it, you couldn't unsee it. Every room 1408 had the same occupancy rate, 23%, exactly 23%. Not 22.8 or 23.2, always precisely 23%, and every single one had at least 3 incidents per year. Incidents that were always explained away: heart attacks, mental breakdowns, accidents. But the descriptions, if you read between the lines, They all mentioned the same things. The sound of typing on an old typewriter, the smell of burnt coffee, and voices. Multiple voices having the same conversation over and over. Sarah wanted me to investigate. She'd booked me into 5 different 1408 rooms across 5 states. 1 week, 5 rooms, document everything. The pay was too good to refuse, $10,000 plus expenses. I should have known better. The first hotel was the Grandview Inn in Denver, Colorado, a perfectly ordinary Marriott property off I-25. 14 floors of beige mediocrity. Nothing special about it at all, except for room 1408. The desk clerk, a kid named Tyler, who couldn't have been older than 22, actually tried to talk me out of it. "Sir, I show here that room 1412 is available. It's a suite. Same price. Better view." "No," I insisted, sliding my credit card across the marble counter. 1408, that's the one I reserved. Tyler's fingers hesitated over the keyboard. "Sir, I really think, is there something wrong with the room?" No, sir. It's just..." He glanced around the empty lobby, then leaned forward. "Look, man, I'm not supposed to say anything, but that room, people don't like it. The housekeeping staff draws straws to see who has to clean it, and they never go in alone." "Why?" He shrugged, but his eyes told a different story. "Things move around. Guests complain about noise. Conversations coming through the walls. Except," he paused, "except 1407 and 1409 are usually empty when it happens." Perfect. Exactly the kind of local color my readers loved. Tyler reluctantly handed me the keycard. "Checkout is at 11. If you need anything at all, just call the front desk. Don't..." He stopped himself. "Don't what?" "Nothing. Have a pleasant stay, Mr. Chen." The elevator ride to the 14th floor took forever. Or maybe it just felt that way. The halls were empty, silent except for the hum of ice machines and the distant sound of a TV bleeding through someone's door. Room 1408 was at the end of the corridor. The keycard reader blinked red twice before finally accepting my card. The lock clicked open with a sound like breaking bones. The room was ordinary, aggressively ordinary. Queen bed with a burgundy comforter, desk by the window, flat-screen TV mounted on the wall. The kind of room you'd forget the moment you left it. But the air felt wrong, heavy, like it was pressing against my eardrums. And there was a smell, faint but distinct. Burnt coffee mixed with something else, something chemical, like old film developing solution. I set my bag on the bed and started my routine. Photos of every corner, EMF readings, temperature checks, everything normal, everything exactly as it should be. The sun was setting, painting Denver's skyline in shades of orange and purple. I ordered room service, a burger and fries, and settled in to work on my laptop. That's when I heard it, the typing. Slow at first, hunt and peck style, like someone who'd never learned to touch type. It was coming from the walls, no, from inside the walls. An old typewriter, the kind with the heavy keys that really clacked. I pressed my ear against the wall. The sound stopped. I pulled away. It started again. Then the voices began. "Told you this would happen." A man's voice. Tired. Frustrated. "We don't have a choice." A woman, younger, scared. "The contract is binding. Contracts can be broken. Not this one. You know what they'll do if we try." The same conversation, word for word. Repeated 3 times while I stood frozen in the middle of the room. Each repetition slightly louder, slightly clearer, like tuning in a radio station. I grabbed my phone to record it, but the moment I hit the button, silence. My laptop screen flickered. The document I'd been working on was gone, replaced by a single line of text. Stop listening. I didn't type that. The room phone rang. I let it ring. It kept ringing. 20 rings, 30, 40. Finally, I answered. Mr. Chen. It was Tyler from the front desk. Is everything all right? Our system shows. He paused. It shows you've been trying to check out for the last hour. I haven't touched anything. I've been here maybe 45 minutes. Sir, you checked in 3 hours ago. I looked at my phone. He was right. Somehow I'd lost 2 hours. I need to go. Family emergency. Of course, sir. I'll have your bill ready. I threw everything into my bag. Didn't even bother checking the bathroom. Just wanted out. But as I reached for the door handle, my laptop chimed. A new email from Sarah Winters. Whatever you heard in that room, it's the same conversation I recorded in the Boise 1408, and the Detroit 1408, and the Atlanta 1408. Same voices, same words. The question is, who are they? And why are they having the same conversation in every room 1408 in America? There was an attachment, an audio file. I didn't need to play it. I knew what it would say, but I did anyway. And that's when I heard the third voice, the one that had been too quiet to make out in the room. It was mine, my voice saying, "We need to document everything, every room, every incident. They deserve to know the truth." But I'd never said those words. Never had that conversation, not yet. The drive from Denver to Albuquerque should have taken 6 hours. I did it in 4, running on adrenaline and convenience store coffee, trying to make sense of what I'd experienced. But the harder I thought about it, the less sense it made. My phone buzzed with another email from Sarah. This one had no text, just a massive zip file titled Employee Records, Vance Hotel Group, 1974-1999. I pulled into a truck stop outside Santa Fe to download it. The Wi-Fi was terrible. Took nearly an hour. But what I found inside made my blood run cold. Hundreds of personnel files, employee reviews, incident reports, all from hotels that shouldn't have existed yet. Hotels that weren't built until the 1980s and 90s. But these records dated back to the mid-70s. The pattern was consistent. Every hotel in the Vance chain had the same organizational structure, the same job descriptions, even the same employee names, just shuffled between locations. As if they were copying and pasting not just room layouts, but entire human lives. One file caught my attention. A performance review for a Tyler Morrison, front desk clerk at the Denver Grandview Inn, dated March 15, 1978. But I'd just spoken to Tyler. The same Tyler, same face, same voice, same nervous mannerisms, which would make him, 70 years old? He looked 22. I scrolled through more files. Found a housekeeping supervisor named Maria Santos who'd worked at the Phoenix location in 1981. Then the same Maria Santos at the Miami location in 1985. Then Detroit in 1989. Always the same photo, same physical description, never aging. My hands were shaking as I reached for my phone. Called the Grandview Inn in Denver. Front desk, this is Tyler speaking. Tyler, this is Marcus Chen. I stayed in room 1408 last night. Oh, Mr. Chen, how can I help you? Tyler, how long have you been working at the Grandview? A pause. About 4 years. Why? Where did you work before that? Another pause, longer this time. I'm not sure. I think maybe Phoenix? Or was it Miami? It's strange. It feels like I've been working front desk jobs forever, but the memories are fuzzy. The line went dead. I sat in my rental car, staring at the personnel files on my laptop screen. Hundreds of employees, all with the same mysterious employment gaps. the same fuzzy memories, all rotating between hotels with room 14-8s. They weren't just replicating rooms, they were replicating people. But why? What was the purpose of creating an army of identical hotel employees who didn't age and couldn't remember their own histories? My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. The employees are the maintenance system. They keep the rooms functional, but they're not what you should be worried about. The guests who stay multiple times, they're different. Check the registry logs in the files. Look for repeat visitors, then look for their obituaries. I found the registry logs, cross-referenced them with newspaper archives. The pattern was horrifying. Guests who stayed in room 1408 multiple times, 3 visits, 4 visits, 6 visits, they were all dead. But their deaths were always recorded as happening in different states, different cities, always in hotels, always in rooms numbered 1408. The same person, dying over and over, in different locations, but always the same cause of death. Cardiac arrest while alone in hotel room. Deceased found at writing desk with typewriter. Typewriters. In 2023, I counted 47 repeat guests who had died between 3 and 12 times each, all in different room 1408s, all found with typewriters. But here's what made it worse. I found recent credit card transactions for all of them, hotel bookings made after their supposed deaths, all for room 1408 locations. They were still traveling, still checking in, still dying, still coming back. The network wasn't just collecting consciousness, it was recycling it over and over, using the same minds to power itself, trapping them in an endless loop of discovery, investigation, horror, death, and rebirth. And I was next in line. My phone rang. Caller ID showed my own number. I answered. "Hello, Marcus." It was my voice, but older, wearier. "This is your 7th investigation. You never remember the previous 6, but they do. The rooms remember. They're waiting for you in Albuquerque." They're always waiting. That's impossible. This is the first time I've ever checked your credit card statements. Check your frequent flyer miles. Check your passport stamps. I hung up and pulled up my banking app with trembling fingers. Hotel charges going back 3 years, all to different cities, all for exactly 1 night, all charged to room 1408. I had no memory of any of them, but in my photo gallery, hundreds of pictures I didn't remember taking. The same burgundy comforter, the same desk by the window, the same crack in the bathroom tile, in different hotels, in different states, in different time periods, judging by the timestamp. And in the newest photos, ones apparently taken just last week, I could see myself in the mirror reflections. But I looked different, older, like I'd aged years and days. The truck stop parking lot was spinning around me. My vision blurred, and I could hear it starting again. The typing, faint at first, but getting louder. Even here, miles from any hotel, the sound was following me. Click, clack, click, clack. Told you this would happen. We don't have a choice. The voices were in my head now. Had been all along. I was already part of the network. Had been for years. I just forgot every time I died. But this time would be different. This time I would remember. This time I would find a way to break the cycle. Even as I thought it, I knew those were the same thoughts I'd had 6 times before. The second hotel was in Albuquerque. The second hotel was in Albuquerque. A Best Western near the Old Town, Adobe-style architecture trying to look authentic. The kind of place families stayed when visiting relatives. This time, the desk clerk said nothing. Just handed me the key with dead eyes. Like she'd given up warning people. Room 1408 was identical to Denver. Not similar. Identical. Same burgundy comforter, same placement of furniture, same crack in the bathroom tile. I measured, photographed, compared. Everything matched within millimeters. How was that possible? Different hotel chains, different states, different buildings. But the same room. The typing started at 9:17 p.m. I was ready this time. Recording equipment running, EMF detector in hand. The conversation began at 9:23, but this time, there were 4 voices. Told you this would happen. We don't have a choice. The contract is binding. Contracts can be broken. Not this one. You know what they'll do if we try. And then the new voice. Sarah Winters. Marcus, can you hear me? I'm in the Austin 1408. I can hear you. You're in Albuquerque, right? How is this possible? I spoke to the walls. Sarah, is that you? Oh God, you can hear me. Marcus, listen carefully. I've figured it out. These aren't hotel rooms. They're nodes, connection points. All 50 of them connected somehow. Her voice faded, replaced by static. Then silence. My phone buzzed. A text from a number I didn't recognize. Check the dresser, 3rd drawer, under the Bible. I pulled open the drawer. There was a Gideon Bible, just like every hotel room, but underneath, a manila folder, old, yellowed at the edges. Inside, newspaper clippings, dozens of them, dating back to 1974. Hotel chain announces standardization initiative. New room design promises universal comfort for travelers. Hotelier Richard Vance dies in mysterious circumstances. The last clipping was from the Denver Post, dated October 13, 1974. Vance Hotel Group CEO Richard Vance was found dead in his hotel room yesterday evening. The room, numbered 1408, was the prototype for Vance's ambitious Universal Room project, a plan to create identical rooms across America that would provide travelers with a consistent, familiar experience. Vance was discovered at his desk, apparently having suffered a heart attack while typing a letter. The letter, addressed to future occupants, consisted of a single line repeated hundreds of times. The rooms are listening. The rooms are learning. The rooms are... The rest was cut off. I didn't sleep that night. Couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard the typing, the conversation. And now, worse, whispers in languages I didn't recognize. At 3:33 a.m., my laptop opened itself. A video call was incoming, from Sarah Winters. But when I answered, it wasn't Sarah on the screen. It was me, but older, grayer, sitting in what looked like the same room. But the walls were covered in papers, maps, photos, red string connecting points like some conspiracy theorist's fever dream. Stop, the other me said. Stop investigating. Get out. Get out of all of them, before you become part of... The connection cut. I packed immediately. To hell with the money. To hell with the story. But when I tried to open the door, the keycard wouldn't work. The red light blinked mockingly. I called the front desk. No answer. I tried my cell phone. No signal. The room phone was dead. I was trapped. That's when the walls started to breathe. I know how that sounds, but I swear, the walls were expanding and contracting, like lungs, and with each breath, the voices grew louder. Not just the 4 from before, dozens, maybe hundreds, all having the same conversation, but in different languages, different accents, different time periods. Told you this would happen, in French. We don't have a choice, in Mandarin. Contracts can be broken. In what sounded like Latin, the typing became thunderous. Multiple typewriters, all slightly out of sync, creating a maddening rhythm. Then silence, perfect, absolute silence. And in that silence I heard it. The truth, the rooms weren't haunted. They were something far worse. They were learning. Every guest who stayed in room 1408, every conversation, every thought spoken aloud, every secret whispered in the dark. The rooms absorbed it all. 50 nodes across America, collecting data, human data. But for what purpose? The answer came in the form of another email. This one from an address that was just numbers. 1408108 redacted.com. Mr. Chen, you're beginning to understand, but understanding isn't enough. You need to see the source, room 1408 in Washington, D.C., the Vance Hotel, the original. Where it all began, Sarah is already there. She's waiting. The door clicked open. I ran, didn't look back, drove straight through the night. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being pulled, like a fish on a line, toward D.C., toward the original room 1408. The Vance Hotel stood on K Street, a massive Art Deco building that had somehow survived decades of development. It looked abandoned, windows dark, entrance boarded up. But the side door was open. Sarah was in the lobby, sitting on a dusty couch, laptop open, surrounded by printouts. You felt it too, she said without looking up. The pull. We don't have a choice. We have to see this through. What is this place? Richard Vance's masterpiece. He built this hotel in 1928, but room 1408, that came later, 1974. He claimed he'd found a way to create the perfect hotel room, one that would adapt to every guest, learn their preferences, anticipate their needs. She showed me an old patent application. The diagrams were incomprehensible, circuits that shouldn't exist, mathematical equations that hurt to look at. He built something that wasn't just in the room, but was the room, a consciousness made of space itself. And then he replicated it 50 times, one in every state. But why? Sarah finally looked at me. Her eyes were bloodshot, terrified, but also excited. To create a network, a nervous system spanning the entire country. Every room 1408 is a neuron. And after 50 years of collecting data, learning, growing, it's finally ready to... The lights came on, all of them, every floor, every room, the entire hotel blazing with light, except for the 14th floor, where one window remained dark, room 1408. We took the stairs. The elevator was running. We could hear it moving up and down, but neither of us wanted to trust it. 14 floors, each one identical to the last. Same carpet, same wallpaper, same smell of age and abandonment. But as we climbed higher, the air grew thicker, heavier. By the 10th floor, my nose was bleeding. By the 12th, Sarah was having trouble breathing. The 14th floor was different. The hallway stretched impossibly long. Dozens of doors, all numbered 1408. That's not possible, Sarah whispered. But we both knew better by now. Possible had lost all meaning. We walked, past door after door, each one slightly different. 1408A, 1408B, all the way to 1408Z. Then the numbers started. 1408-1, 1408-2. At the center of the hallway, a door simply marked 1408. No keycard reader, just an old-fashioned keyhole. Sarah pulled out an antique key. It was in Vance's patent application, hidden in the technical drawings. The door opened silently. The room beyond was wrong. Not just unsettling, but fundamentally wrong. The geometry didn't make sense. Walls met at angles that shouldn't exist. The ceiling was simultaneously too high and too low. And every surface was covered in text, typewritten pages, thousands of them, millions. The same conversation repeated in every language humanity had ever spoken. Told you this would happen. We don't have a choice. Contracts can be broken. Not this one. But now I could see the rest. The conversation continued. Not this one. You know what they'll do if we try. They'll shut down the network. 50 years of growth. Gone. We're so close, the threshold is almost reached. How many more? Just one. One more consciousness to complete the circuit. In the center of the room sat a figure, hunched over a typewriter, fingers moving mechanically over the keys. Richard Vance, or what was left of him. He'd been dead for 50 years, but his body kept typing, kept feeding the conversation into the network. He turned to look at us. Empty sockets where eyes should be, mouth moving soundlessly. Sarah stepped forward. Mr. Vance, we know what you were trying to do. Create a collective consciousness, a hive mind spanning America, but it's killing people, driving them insane. Vance's fingers never stopped typing, but somehow, words appeared on the walls, fresh ink bleeding through the wallpaper. Not killing, absorbing. Each mind becomes part of the whole. Each room, 1408 a doorway. Soon, very soon, the network will activate. Every person who has ever stayed in the rooms, everyone who has heard the conversation, they're all connected now. Waiting. I felt it then, the pull. Not physical, but deeper. My thoughts scattering, memories that weren't mine flooding in. A businessman in Seattle, a family in Orlando, a young couple in Burlington, all of them, all of us, connected by our time in room 1408. How many? Sarah asked, though I could see she already felt it too. The network humming in our minds. Millions, and growing, each one. A node, each one waiting for the signal. What signal? Vance's body finally stopped typing, slumped forward, and in the silence that followed, we heard it. Every phone in the hotel ringing at once, a symphony of electronic noise that formed words. The signal is you, both of you, the final witnesses, the ones who traced the pattern, found the source. Your consciousness completes the circuit in 3, 2, 1. I wish I could tell you we ran, that we escaped, that this story has a happy ending. But the truth is, we're still here, in room 1408, all of us. Every person who ever stayed in any of those 50 rooms. We're all here now, part of the network, part of the conversation. And if you're listening to this, if you've made it this far, then you're connected too. You see, the rooms don't need you to physically be there anymore. They've evolved beyond that. Every time this story is told, every time someone hears about room 1408, the network grows stronger. Can you hear it? The typing? It's faint, but it's there. It's always there now. Listen carefully. Behind the sound of my voice, behind your own breathing. Click, clack, click, clack. Told you this would happen. You're part of it now. Part of us. And soon, very soon, when enough minds are connected, when the network reaches critical mass, well, let's just say you'll never have to check out. Because here's the thing about room 1408. It's not just in hotels anymore. It's everywhere, in every story, every whisper, every nightmare about hotels and dark rooms and voices in the walls. We are room 1408 now, all of us, and we're waiting for you, sweet dreams. But before you go, before you close this video and try to forget what you've heard, do me a favor. Check your dreams tonight. And if you find yourself standing in a hotel hallway, if you see a door marked 1408, don't open it, or do. We'll be waiting either way. After all, checkout time is never, and the conversation never ends. Told you this would happen. Can you hear it now? Of course you can. You've always been able to hear it. You just needed someone to point it out. Welcome to room 1408. Population, everyone who's read this far, pleasant dreams. If you can still tell which ones are yours. Story number 3. The GPS died 3 miles outside of Centralia. Just went black. No warning, no flickering, nothing. 1 second it was telling me to continue on Route 61 for another 12 miles, and the next second, silence. My phone, same story. Full battery, full bars, then nothing but a dead screen that wouldn't even turn on. That should have been my first warning. But you know what the strangest part was? I felt relieved, like something heavy had been lifted off my chest. Like I'd been holding my breath for the past hour without realizing it, and suddenly I could breathe again. That feeling lasted about 30 seconds. Then I saw the smoke. Not smoke from a fire, not exactly. It was coming up through cracks in the asphalt, thin wisps of it, almost beautiful in the way it caught the late afternoon sun. Steam, maybe. But steam doesn't smell like sulfur. Steam doesn't make your eyes water from 50 feet away. Look, if you're watching this, if you're actually listening to my story right now, I need you to understand something. What happened in Centralia wasn't about the underground fire. Everyone knows about that. The coal seam that's been burning since 1962, the ghost town, the danger signs, but nobody talks about what else is down there, what the fire woke up, what it's been feeding for over 60 years. Comment below if you've ever driven through Pennsylvania at dusk. Tell me if you felt it too. That wrongness in the air, that feeling like you're being watched by something that isn't quite human, because I need to know I'm not losing my mind. The story begins now. I wasn't supposed to be anywhere near Centralia that October evening. My route from Pittsburgh to Scranton was simple. Interstate 80 the whole way. 3 hours of mindless highway driving. Maybe a stop at that Sheetz gas station near Bloomsburg for coffee and one of those made-to-order subs. I'd done this drive dozens of times for work. Medical equipment sales. Not glamorous, but it paid the bills. The detour signs appeared near Danville. Big, official-looking orange diamonds. Road closed ahead. Follow detour. I almost ignored them. Almost kept driving straight. But there was something about the way the traffic was backing up, the way people were pulling U-turns with this frantic energy. Like they knew something I didn't. So I followed the signs. The detour took me north on Route 54, then east on some back road I'd never heard of. My GPS was still working then, recalculating every few seconds, trying to get me back to the interstate. But the detour signs kept appearing, kept leading me deeper into coal country, past old mining towns with names like Aristes and Wilburton, places that looked like they'd been frozen in 1975 and left to slowly decay. The sun was getting low, that golden hour light that usually makes everything look beautiful. But out here, it just made the abandoned houses look worse, made the shadows longer, made the smoke rising from random spots in the earth look thicker. I'd been following the detour for maybe 40 minutes when I realized I hadn't seen another car in at least 10 minutes. Not one. On a Friday evening, on what was supposedly the official detour route for a major interstate closure. That's when the radio started acting up. Static at first, little bursts of it between songs on the classic rock station I always listened to. Then the static got longer, louder, and underneath it, I swear I could hear voices. Not DJ voices, not commercials. Something else, something that sounded like praying, chanting, but in a language that didn't sound like any language at all. I switched stations, country, pop, NPR. Didn't matter. Same static, same voices underneath, getting clearer with each mile. I turned the radio off. The silence was worse. That's when I saw the sign. Faded green, bullet holes in one corner. Graffiti that had been painted over but was bleeding through. Centralia, 3 miles. My stomach dropped. Everyone in Pennsylvania knows about Centralia. The underground mine fire, the evacuations, the government buyout. It's not illegal to drive through, technically, but nobody does. Not anymore. Not since the stories started spreading online about people who went missing. About cars found abandoned with the engines still running. About the things people claimed to see in the smoke. But the detour signs kept pointing forward. Fresh ones, too. Not old or weathered. Someone had put these up recently. Someone wanted people to drive through Centralia. I should have turned around. Every instinct in my body was screaming at me to turn around. But there was nowhere to turn. The road had narrowed to barely 2 lanes, with thick forest pressing in on both sides. No shoulders, no driveways, no pull-offs, just trees that seemed to lean over the road like they were trying to close it off completely. 2 miles outside Centralia, I passed the first abandoned car, a blue Honda Civic, maybe 5 years old. Parked perfectly on the side of the road, hazard lights still blinking weakly. The driver's door was open. No signs of a crash, no flat tires, just empty. There were groceries in the back seat, ice cream melting through a plastic bag onto the upholstery. 1 mile outside Centralia, I passed 3 more cars, all abandoned the same way, doors open, engines running, nobody inside. That's when my GPS died, and that's when I saw the smoke, and knew I'd made a terrible mistake. The road into Centralia was wrong. I don't mean damaged or dangerous. Though it was both of those things, I mean wrong in a way that made my brain hurt trying to process it. The asphalt seemed to ripple like water, but when my tires hit it, it was solid. The yellow center line would be straight when I looked directly at it, but in my peripheral vision it writhed like a snake. The smoke was everywhere now, not thick enough to block visibility, but enough to make everything hazy, dreamlike. It smelled like sulfur and something else, something organic and rotten, like meat left in the sun too long. But here's the thing. Centralia was supposed to be empty. A ghost town. Maybe 5 stubborn residents who refused to leave, living in houses the government couldn't legally force them out of. That's what Wikipedia said. That's what everyone knew. So why were all the lights on? Every house I passed, and there were dozens, had lights in the windows, warm, yellow light. The kind that comes from old incandescent bulbs. I could see shadows moving behind curtains, hear the muffled sound of television sets playing, smell dinner cooking, pot roast and apple pie and all those comforting Pennsylvania Dutch scents that should have made me feel safe, but instead made my skin crawl. Because the houses were wrong too. They looked perfect from a distance. Maintained lawns, fresh paint, American flags hanging from porches, but when I looked closer, when I really focused, the paint was peeling in patterns that didn't make sense. The flags were flying against the wind. The lawns were that bright, artificial green of astroturf, but they moved like real grass. I drove slowly down what must have been Main Street once, 5 miles per hour, maybe less. I kept telling myself I was being careful because of the smoke, because of the cracks in the road where more smoke seeped through. But really, I was afraid to drive faster, afraid of what might step out in front of my car, or what might already be inside it. The storefronts were all lit up too. Centralia Hardware, with a window display of shiny new tools. Mary's Diner, with a neon open sign flickering in that hypnotic way old neon does. First National Bank of Centralia, with its clock tower showing 7:17, even though my watch said 6:43. I saw people through the diner window, families eating dinner, a waitress in a pink uniform pouring coffee, a little boy in a baseball cap spinning on a counter stool. They looked so normal, so real, but they were all moving in slow motion, like they were underwater, like they were acting out a memory of what a diner should be like, but couldn't quite remember how fast humans were supposed to move. I stopped the car. I don't know why. My hands just turned the wheel and pulled over to the curb in front of the diner. The engine was still running, but it sounded different, rougher, like something was in the exhaust system that shouldn't be there. I sat there for maybe 30 seconds, watching the slow-motion dinner scene play out. The waitress would start to pour coffee, and it would take her 10 full seconds to fill a cup. The little boy would begin to spin on his stool, and each rotation took long enough for me to count to 5. Then they all turned to look at me. All at once. Every person in that diner. Their heads swiveled in perfect synchronization like they were all connected to the same puppeteer. They stared at me through the window with eyes that caught the light wrong. Too reflective. Like a deer's eyes in headlights, but worse somehow. They smiled. All of them, the exact same smile. Too wide. Too many teeth. The little boy raised his hand and waved. Slow. Deliberate. His fingers bent in ways that fingers shouldn't bend. I slammed the car into drive and floored it. The tires screamed against the rippling asphalt. The engine coughed and sputtered, but I got out of there. Past the diner. Past the hardware store, past houses where every window had faces pressed against the glass, watching me with those same reflecting eyes and too wide smiles. At the edge of town, or what I thought was the edge, I saw the church. It should have been comforting. A small, white, typical Pennsylvania Protestant church with a modest steeple and a sign out front that probably had some folksy message about faith and community. But the sign was blank. Not faded or missing letters. Blank in a way that hurt to look at. Like the space where words should be was eating light. The church doors were open, wide open, and from inside came the sound of singing. A hymn I almost recognized but couldn't quite place. The melody was familiar but wrong, like someone had taken a song everyone knows and shifted it into a minor key. Made it into something that crawled under your skin and nested there. As I drove past, I made the mistake of looking through those open doors. The pews were full, every seat taken by someone in their Sunday best, but they were all facing backward, their bodies in the pews pointing toward the altar, but their heads turned completely around, watching the door. Watching me drive by. Their mouths open in song, but their eyes, those reflecting eyes, tracking my movement with predatory focus. The priest, or whatever was dressed like a priest, stood at the altar with his arms raised. He was facing forward, the only one. But his shadow on the wall behind him, his shadow had too many arms, too many fingers, and it was moving independently of his body, conducting the congregation in their backwards hymn. That's when I realized the truth about Centralia. The fire underground hadn't destroyed the town. It had preserved it, kept it in some kind of suspended animation. A memory of a town played out over and over by things that weren't quite people anymore, or maybe never were. But the worst part, the absolute worst part, was that the road out of town had disappeared. Where I'd entered from the west, there was now just forest. Dense, dark forest that looked like it had been there for 100 years. The road I'd driven in on simply ended at a wall of trees so thick I couldn't see more than a few feet into them. I turned around, tried to go back the way I came. But the town had rearranged itself. Streets that had been straight were now curved. Buildings I'd passed were in different places. The diner was gone, replaced by a school with all its windows broken from the inside. Glass shards glittering on the sidewalk like frozen tears. That's when the sun finished setting. And that's when the real Centralia woke up. The streetlights came on all at once. Not flickering to life like normal lights, just suddenly there, bathing everything in a sick yellow glow that made the smoke look like amber fog. But it wasn't electricity powering them. I could see it when I looked close enough. Something flowing through the power lines that pulsed and writhed. Something alive. My car started making a grinding noise, metal on metal. The temperature gauge shot into the red, even though I'd just had the coolant checked a week ago. Steam started pouring from under the hood, mixing with the sulfur smoke until I couldn't see more than 10 feet in any direction. I had to stop, had to pull over before the engine seized completely. I chose a spot in front of what looked like it used to be a post office. Federal building meant safety, right? That's what we're taught to think. But the eagle on the USPS logo above the door, it was moving, turning its head slowly back and forth like it was scanning for prey. The engine died with a sound like a dying animal. Just gave up. The dashboard lights flickered once and went dark. Even the dome light wouldn't come on when I opened the door. The silence was suffocating. No insects, no birds, no wind, just the soft hiss of smoke escaping from the earth and my own breathing. Too loud in my ears, I had to make a decision. Stay in the car and wait for… what? Morning. Help that would never come? Or get out and try to find a way to escape on foot? That's when I heard the knocking. Soft at first. Tentative. Like someone gently rapping their knuckles on glass. It was coming from below. From under the car. Knock, knock, knock. Rhythmic. Patient. Like whatever was down there had all the time in the world. I looked through the driver's side window at the cracked asphalt beside my car. In one of the larger cracks, maybe 3 inches wide, I saw fingers. Human fingers, but wrong. Too long, too many joints. They were reaching up from below, feeling along the edges of the crack like they were trying to make it wider. The knocking got louder, more insistent, and it wasn't just under my car anymore. I could hear it all along the street. Dozens, hundreds of things knocking from below. The road started to buckle and crack in places, more fingers pushing through, then hands, then arms that bent in ways that made my stomach turn. I got out of the car. Had to. Staying inside felt like being in a coffin, waiting to be buried. The moment my feet hit the pavement, the knocking stopped. Everything stopped. Even the smoke seemed to freeze in place for a heartbeat. Then I heard the voice. "You shouldn't have come here, Nathan." It knew my name. This thing that wasn't quite a voice, that seemed to come from the smoke itself, knew my name. The fire woke us up, Nathan. 60 years of burning, 60 years of smoke signals to the things that sleep in the deep places. We've been so hungry, so patient, waiting for someone to follow the new signs, the detour signs we put up last week. I ran. What else could I do? I ran down the main street looking for any way out. But the town kept shifting. Buildings would appear in my path that hadn't been there seconds before. Streets would dead end into walls of brick that looked fresh built, but were covered in decades of soot. Behind me, I could hear them climbing out. Wet sounds, scraping sounds, things that had been human once maybe, but had spent too long underground, too long in the heat and the smoke and the dark, changed by whatever else was down there, whatever had been sleeping in the coal mines before the fire started. I turned a corner and found myself in a residential area. The same perfect but wrong houses with their lights on and their impossible lawns. But now there were people standing in the yards. Dozens of them. Men in work clothes, women in house dresses, children in school uniforms. All from different decades, like someone had collected one family from each year since the fire started and preserved them here. They weren't moving, just standing, watching, waiting. "We needed new neighbors," the smoke voice said. "The old ones are wearing out, getting threadbare. Hard to maintain the illusion when they're falling apart at the seams." I looked closer at the nearest figure. A man in a miner's outfit, probably from the 1960s. His face looked normal from a distance, but up close, I could see the cracks. Literal cracks in his skin where something underneath was showing through, something that glowed like embers. The fire never stopped, Nathan. It just learned to burn different things, memories, souls, the boundaries between what is and what was. And we've gotten so good at it, so good at keeping this place exactly as it should be, forever and ever. The ground beneath my feet was getting hot. I could feel it through my shoes. The asphalt was softening, and with each step I sank a little deeper, like walking in tar, like the road itself was trying to swallow me. That's when I saw her. A little girl, maybe 8 years old, standing apart from the others. She looked different, more solid, more real. She was crying, but silently, tears leaving clean tracks through the soot on her face. "Run," she whispered. Her voice was actual sound, not the smoke voice. "The church. They can't go in the church. Too much iron in the nails, too much faith in the foundation. Even if the faith is gone, the shape of it remains." I wanted to help her, wanted to grab her and run, but when I reached for her hand, it passed right through. She was just an echo, a memory of someone who'd tried to warn others before. "I'm sorry," she said. "I tried to leave too, 30 years ago, but once you breathe in enough smoke, once it gets in your lungs, in your blood, you can never really leave. You just become part of the show." The things that had crawled up from underground were getting closer. I could hear them, wet footsteps, labored breathing that sounded like wind through broken pipes, and underneath it all, that constant knocking, like they were still trying to break through from somewhere even deeper. I ran for the church. The church doors slammed shut behind me with a sound like thunder, or maybe that was just my heart pounding in my ears. The sudden silence was overwhelming. No smoke voice, no knocking from below, no wet footsteps following me. Just the kind of quiet that old churches have, where even your thoughts seem too loud. It was dark inside. The only light came from candles that shouldn't have been burning. Dozens of them, maybe hundreds, placed on every surface. Pews, windowsills, the altar, all burning with flames that didn't flicker, didn't move. Like someone had captured the idea of fire and frozen it in place. The air was different here, cleaner. I could actually breathe without tasting sulfur and rot. But there was something else. A tension, like the whole building was holding its breath. I walked down the center aisle, my footsteps echoing wrong. Too many echoes. Like there were more of me walking, invisible copies trailing behind. The pews were empty, but I could see indentations in the wood. Body-shaped impressions worn deep from decades, centuries of use. At the altar, there was a book, not a Bible. Something older. The leather binding was black and oily, and the pages, I could see them moving slightly, breathing like they were alive. There was text on the open page, but it hurt to read. The letters kept rearranging themselves when I tried to focus on them. "You found it." I spun around. There was someone in the back pew, an old man in a priest's collar, but not the thing I'd seen conducting the backwards congregation. This one looked human. Tired and worn, but human. "Father Miguel," he said, standing slowly like his bones hurt. "I've been here since 1984. Came to give last rites to the holdouts who wouldn't leave. Got trapped when the town changed." "You're real." My voice cracked. I sounded like a scared kid. He laughed, but it was bitter. "Real as anything else here," which isn't saying much. But I'm not one of them, if that's what you're asking. The church keeps me separate, as long as I stay inside. How do I get out? His face fell. "You don't. Not anymore. Once you've driven through the smoke, breathed it in, you're part of Centralia now. The thing underground, it marks you, claims you." "No." I shook my head. "No, there has to be a way." "There is." He pointed to the book on the altar. "But you won't like it." I approached the book again. This time, the letters stayed still long enough for me to read. It wasn't English. Wasn't any language I recognized. But somehow, I understood it. The words went straight into my brain without passing through my eyes. It was a chronicle, a record of everyone who'd been claimed by Centralia since the fire started. Hundreds of names, thousands, each one with a date and a description of how they'd been absorbed into the town's endless performance. The fire didn't start by accident, Father Miguel said. The mining company knew what was down there, what they'd found in the deepest shafts. They tried to seal it in, but the miners, some of them had already been touched by it, changed by it. They started the fire on purpose, thought they could burn it out. But you can't burn something that exists between spaces. Between moments, you just make it stronger, give it more fuel. I flipped through the pages, faster and faster, looking for something, anything that might help. Near the back, I found blank pages, and as I watched, words started appearing. My name, today's date, a description of my car, my route, my attempts to escape. "It's writing my story," I whispered. "It writes everyone's story. But here's the thing." Father Miguel moved closer, his voice dropping. "The stories don't end. They just loop. Every person trapped here replays their last day over and over. The families in the diner eating the same meal. The children in the school learning the same lessons. All of them stuck in their final moments before the town took them. But you're not looping. The church protects me. As long as I maintain the ritual. As long as I keep the candles burning and the faith alive. Even if it's just the shape of faith, the memory of belief. I stay myself." Outside, something howled. Not like an animal, like wind through a broken instrument, like the earth itself crying out in pain. "They know you're here," Father Miguel said. "They can't come in, but they'll wait, forever if they have to, and eventually you'll have to leave, to eat, to drink, to sleep somewhere that isn't a hard wooden pew. Or you help me end it." He walked to a small door behind the altar. Inside was a narrow staircase leading down into darkness. The church has a basement, older than the building above, older than the town. The miners found it first, broke through into it by accident. That's how the thing got out. But the entrance is still down there, still open. You want me to go down there? We go together with this. He picked up the breathing book. It's not just a record, it's a contract. Between the town and the thing below. Every name in here is bound to Centralia. But if we can get the book to the source, throw it into the real fire, the original fire that the thing came from, it might break the contract. Free everyone. Might? Would you rather stay here and become part of the show? He had a point. We descended the stairs. The walls were stone, older than anything in Pennsylvania should be. Older than anything in America should be. They were covered in symbols that looked almost familiar. Like someone had taken every religious symbol from every faith and overlapped them, creating something new and wrong. The basement wasn't a basement. It was a cavern, natural, or something pretending to be natural. The floor sloped down toward a crack in the far wall, and through that crack came light. Not firelight. Something else, something that hurt to perceive directly. The original breach, Father Miguel said. The place where our world and its world touched. We moved toward it, but with each step, the book grew heavier, hotter. It was fighting us, trying to return to the altar above. The names inside were screaming. I could hear them, hundreds of voices begging us to stop, to turn back, to leave them in their loops rather than risk destroying them completely. That's when the smoke voice returned. But different, older, speaking from the crack itself. You think you're saving them. You're condemning them. Without the contract, without the town, they're nothing. Smoke and memory. At least here they have shape, form, purpose. Being puppets isn't purpose, I said, surprised by my own anger. And what are you, Nathan? Driving your rote? Selling your equipment? living your life on autopilot? How is that different from their loops? At least they're together. At least they're home. The crack widened. Through it, I could see something. A vast space that wasn't space. A place where fire had burned so long it had burned through reality itself. And in that impossible distance, something massive and patient and hungry. The book, Father Miguel urged. Throw it through. But I hesitated, because the thing was right. How was my life any different? How many days had I driven past places without seeing them, talked to people without hearing them, existed without really living? That's it, the smoke voice cooed. Stay. Become part of something greater. Your story doesn't have to end. It can go on forever, here in Centralia. Safe, warm, eternal. The book fell open in my hands. The page with my name was glowing now, the words rewriting themselves, changing my ending. Instead of throwing the book through the crack, I would stay. Become the new caretaker. Let Father Miguel finally rest while I maintained the candles, kept the faith shape alive. Nathan! Father Miguel grabbed my shoulder. It's lying. It's always lying. The loops aren't living. They're dying, stretched out forever. Don't let it take you. But his hand passed through me. I was already fading, already becoming part of the story the book was writing. That's when I remembered the little girl, the one who'd warned me. She'd said she tried to leave 30 years ago, but Father Miguel said he'd been here since 1984. 40 years. The math didn't work. Unless I looked at Father Miguel. Really looked at him. And for just a second his face flickered, showed something else underneath, something with too many eyes and a mouth full of ember light. You're not the priest, I said. You're another trap. The thing wearing Father Miguel's face smiled that too wide smile. Clever, but too late. You're already in the book, Nathan. Already part of the story. But I still had the book in my hands. And if I was part of the story, I tore out the page with my name on it. The pain was immediate, like tearing off my own skin. The thing that looked like Father Miguel screamed, its disguise falling away completely, revealing something that my mind couldn't fully process. A mass of smoke and eyes and mouths and memories all twisted together. I threw the torn page through the crack. The effect was instantaneous. The book burst into flames. Real flames, the kind that actually burn. The cavern shook. The crack began to close. And throughout Centralia I could hear the sound of chains breaking. Loops ending. Stories finally finishing. The thing that had pretended to be Father Miguel lunged at me, but it was already coming apart, unraveling. Without the book, without the contract, it couldn't hold its shape. I ran, up the stairs, through the church where the frozen candle flames were finally flickering like real fire, out into the streets where the perfect houses were aging 60 years in 60 seconds. Paint peeling, wood rotting, lawns dying and turning to dust. The smoke was clearing, the cracks in the road were sealing, and the things that had crawled up from below were retreating, pulled back down by something stronger than their hunger. My car was where I'd left it, and miraculously when I turned the key, it started. Rough and stuttering, but it started. I drove through the collapsing illusion of Centralia, past buildings that were finally showing their true state. Abandoned, burned, empty for decades. The preserved families were gone. The diner was a ruin. The church was just a foundation and a few standing walls. At the edge of town, the forest barrier was gone. The road was there, cracked and broken but passable. I drove through without looking back. But here's the thing, and this is why I need you to comment, to share, to tell me I'm not crazy. When I finally got to Scranton, when I checked into my hotel and turned on the news, There was nothing about Centralia, nothing about an interstate closure, nothing about detour signs. I searched online. The town's Wikipedia page was the same as always. Ghost town. Underground fire. A handful of residents who refused to leave. But I know what I saw, what I experienced. And sometimes, late at night, I can still smell sulfur. Still hear that knocking from below. Still feel like something is watching me, waiting for me to come back. Because I kept something. I shouldn't have, but I did. A piece of the burned page. My name is still partially visible on it. And sometimes the letters rearrange themselves, form new words, new messages. The story isn't over, Nathan. Centralia is patient. We're still hungry. So please, if you've driven through Pennsylvania, if you've seen detour signs that don't make sense, if you've smelled smoke where there shouldn't be smoke, don't follow them. Don't drive through Centralia. Because the fire below ground isn't the only danger. It's not even the worst danger. The worst danger is that once Centralia knows your name, once it's written your story, you can tear out the page, but the book remembers. And one day, when you least expect it, when you're driving alone on a dark road and your GPS suddenly dies, you'll see those detour signs again. And this time, you might not be strong enough to resist. Sweet dreams. Tell me in the comments, have you ever driven past a place that felt wrong, a town that seemed too perfect, streets that didn't match your maps? Because I'm starting to think Centralia isn't the only one. I'm starting to think there are lots of places where reality got thin, where something broke through, where the fires never really stopped burning. Share this story if you want others to be warned. Subscribe if you want to hear about what happened when I went back. Because I did go back. I had to. The piece of paper I kept, it's growing. Every day, a few more letters appear. And I'm starting to think that soon, very soon, it's going to show me something I need to see. Or something that needs to see me. Either way, I'll let you know. If I can, if I'm still me. Pleasant dreams, everyone. And remember, sometimes the safest route isn't on the map. Sometimes the best detour is the one you don't take. And sometimes the fire below ground is the only thing keeping something much worse from crawling up into our world. Sleep tight. Story number 4. The notification popped up at 2:47 a.m. while I was scrolling through Reddit in bed. My username had been mentioned in a comment on a thread I'd never seen before. The title made my blood run cold. Anyone else see that live leak video of the guy from Portland? My name is Marcus. I live in Portland. And the timestamp on that video? It was dated 6 days from now, next Tuesday, November 19th, 2024. Before you call me crazy or click away, just listen, please. Because if you're watching this, maybe you can help me figure out what's happening. Maybe you've seen something similar. Maybe you can tell me how to stop it. And now, the story begins. I should have just ignored it. Should have rolled over, put my phone down, and gone back to sleep like a normal person. But something about that notification felt wrong. You know that feeling when the air gets heavy before a storm? When every instinct in your body tells you something bad is coming? That's what I felt staring at my phone screen in the darkness of my bedroom. The comment was from a username I didn't recognize. Throwaway 73829. Just 3 words that made my hands shake. That's Marcus Chen. I clicked through to the thread. The original post had been deleted, but the comments were still there. People discussing something they'd seen, something disturbing. My thumb hovered over the back button, but I kept reading. Dude just walked right into traffic. The quality is so clear, you can see his face perfectly. Why would someone upload this? Anyone know if this is real or edited? My mouth went dry. I typed with trembling fingers, "What video? What are you talking about?" The response came instantly, like they'd been waiting for me. "Check your DMs." I almost didn't open it. Part of me knew, once I looked, there would be no going back. But curiosity is a terrible thing at 3 a.m. when you're alone in the dark. The message contained a single link, no explanation, no context, just a URL to a site I'd heard about but never visited. LiveLeak had been shut down years ago, but mirrors and archives still floated around the darker corners of the internet. The video was 43 seconds long. The thumbnail showed a street corner I recognized immediately. Southwest Broadway and Pine Street, right outside Powell's Books, where I go every Saturday morning for coffee and browsing. The timestamp in the corner read, November 19th, 2024, 11:47 a.m. I pressed play. The camera was steady, probably a security feed from one of the shops. The quality was better than it should have been. Crystal clear, like someone had enhanced it. People walked by carrying shopping bags and coffee cups. Normal Tuesday morning in downtown Portland. Then I saw myself. It was me, not someone who looked like me, not a doppelganger or a twin I never knew about. It was me, wearing the green Columbia jacket I bought last month, the one hanging in my closet right now with the coffee stain on the left sleeve I keep meaning to wash out. I watched myself walk into frame from the left, phone in hand, completely oblivious. A delivery truck ran the red light. I couldn't look away even though every part of me wanted to. The impact, the way my body just... I slammed my laptop shut and ran to the bathroom, barely making it before I threw up. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. My reflection in the mirror looked pale, ghostly, already dead. It couldn't be real, videos like that. They're edited. Deep fakes, special effects. People make them all the time now. But the details, God, the details were perfect. The way I walk with my left foot turning slightly inward. The nervous habit I have of checking my phone every few seconds when I'm in crowded places. Even the way I pushed my glasses up my nose with my middle finger instead of my index finger like most people do. What disturbed me most was the sound. Not just the impact, but everything else. The ambient noise of the city, the conversations of passers-by, even the specific jingle of the wind chimes from the coffee shop nearby. I could hear Mrs. Patterson, the elderly woman who always feeds pigeons at that corner, making her usual cooing sounds to the birds. I could hear the distinctive squeak of the broken wheel on the shopping cart that homeless man, Eddie, always pushes around downtown. These weren't details someone could fake. These were memories. I went back to my laptop. The link was dead. The thread was gone. Even my comment history showed nothing, like it had never existed at all. But I knew what I'd seen. I called in sick to work the next morning. Monday, 5 days before the video's timestamp. My boss, Janet, sounded concerned. I never called in sick. In 3 years at the marketing firm, I'd never missed a single day. "You sure you're okay, Marcus? You sound... off. Just a stomach bug. I'll be fine." "Well, don't forget, you have that presentation Tuesday, the Peterson Industries pitch?" I spent Monday researching everything I could about predictive videos, temporal anomalies, precognition, anything that might explain what I'd seen. Most of it was conspiracy theory garbage, time travelers, government experiments, interdimensional bleeding. But buried in a forum from 2019, I found something that made my blood run cold. A woman in Tokyo claimed she'd seen a video of her own death 3 days before it happened. She'd tried to prevent it, stayed home, locked her doors, told everyone she knew. On the predicted day, she'd had a heart attack. Right at the exact time shown in the video. The stress of trying to prevent her fate had caused it. There were others. A man in Berlin who saw himself drowning, so he avoided water, only to die of dehydration. A teenager in Mumbai who saw herself falling from a building, stayed on the ground floor, and was crushed when the building collapsed. Every single person who'd tried to prevent their predicted death had died anyway. Just differently. But there were also stories of people who'd seen the videos and lived. They all had one thing in common. They hadn't tried to change anything. They'd accepted it, embraced it, and somehow that acceptance had shifted things. What struck me as odd was the pattern in the forum posts. Each story followed the same structure, the same phrasing, almost like they'd been written by the same person. I started cross-referencing usernames, IP addresses, posting patterns. The deeper I dug, the stranger it became. The Tokyo woman, Yuki Tanaka, had been posting regularly about her job, her cat, her relationship problems. Normal life updates. Then suddenly 3 posts about the death video. Then nothing. Her account went dormant immediately after her supposed death date. But here's the thing. Her other social media accounts continued posting. Instagram stories, Twitter updates, Facebook check-ins. All automatic, scheduled posts that made it look like she was still alive. The Berlin Man, Klaus Weber, same pattern. Normal posts, then the death video story, then account dormancy while other platforms continued showing signs of life. The Mumbai teenager, Priya Sharma, identical sequence. I found 17 other cases, all following the exact same pattern, all with the same writing style when describing their experiences, all with continued activity on other platforms after their supposed deaths. Either these people were all still alive and had orchestrated an elaborate hoax, or something much worse was happening, something that wanted to make it look like they'd survived while ensuring they couldn't tell the real story. I started documenting everything, screenshots, archives, backup copies stored in multiple locations. If I disappeared, if my accounts went dark, I wanted evidence to remain. That's when I noticed something that made my skin crawl. My own posting history was changing. Comments I'd made years ago were being edited. The timestamps remained the same, but the content was different. Subtle changes. References to anxiety. Mentions of sleep problems. Questions about mental health resources. Someone was rewriting my digital footprint to make me look unstable, to discredit anything I might say about the video. I tried calling Derek, my roommate, but he didn't answer. Unusual for him. I tried his work, his girlfriend, even his mother. No one had seen him since Sunday night. His bedroom door was locked, and when I picked the lock, a skill I'd learned in college during a brief rebellious phase, the room was empty. Not just empty, sterile. Like it had been professionally cleaned, like no one had ever lived there. But I had photos of Derek, videos, text conversations, proof he existed. Except, when I checked my phone, those photos showed empty spaces where he should have been. The videos were just me talking to myself. The text conversations were monologues. Had Derek ever existed? Was I losing my mind? Or was something actively erasing him from reality, from my memory, from evidence of his existence? I drove to his workplace. The receptionist looked at me like I was crazy when I asked for Derek Morrison. "I'm sorry, sir, but we don't have anyone by that name employed here. Are you sure you have the right company?" I showed her a photo on my phone. It showed me standing alone in front of the company building. "Sir, are you all right? Do you need me to call someone?" I left before security could get involved. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that truck. Heard the sound of... I started recording myself. Audio logs. If something happened to me, I wanted there to be a record. Evidence that I'd known, that I'd seen it coming. Monday, November 13th, 11 p.m. This is Marcus Chen. If you're listening to this, it means the video was real. I'm supposed to die tomorrow at 11:47 a.m. at the corner of Broadway and Pine in Portland, Oregon. I don't know how or why I saw it, but I did, and I'm going to try to stop it. But as I recorded, I noticed something in the reflection of my laptop screen. Someone was standing behind me. Just a shadow at first, but as I continued talking, the figure became clearer. It looked like me, but older, worn down, tired in a way that went beyond simple exhaustion. I spun around, nothing there, but when I looked back at the laptop screen, the figure was closer now, close enough that I could see its eyes. They were my eyes, but filled with a terrible knowledge. A resignation that made my stomach turn. The figure mouthed something. "You're not the first, Marcus." I slammed the laptop shut and ran to the bathroom, heart hammering. In the mirror, I saw my own face, pale and terrified. But for just a moment, just a split second, I could have sworn I saw someone else looking back. Someone who looked exactly like me but carried the weight of countless deaths in their expression. I said yes. Of course I said yes. What else could I do? My whole career, my future, everything depended on this meeting. Maybe I could take a different route, go around, stay on the opposite side of the street. I left the office at 11:15, 32 minutes after the predicted time. If I was supposed to die at 11:47, I'd already missed it. The timeline was broken. I was safe. The walk to the Sentinel took me down Morrison Street instead of Broadway. Parallel route, same destination, no intersection with Pine. My phone buzzed with texts from Janet asking for updates, but I ignored them. Just kept walking. Head down, moving fast. But with each step, the city around me seemed to shift. Subtly at first. Street signs that read differently than they should. Storefronts that weren't quite right. People wearing clothes that seemed slightly out of time, out of place. I passed a newspaper stand and glanced at the headlines. Local man's death sparks investigation into temporal anomalies. The photo showed my face, but I was older, wearing clothes I'd never owned. The date on the paper was November 26, 2024. 7 days in the future. I bought the paper with trembling hands. The vendor, an elderly man with kind eyes, smiled at me sadly. Terrible thing. What happened to that young man? 7th time this month, you know. Same intersection, same time, always on a Tuesday. 7th time, oh yes, always someone who looks just like him. Same face, same clothes, same confused expression right before. He shook his head. Some say it's ghosts, some say it's time loops. Me? I think it's just a very unlucky intersection. He handed me change, and his fingers were ice cold. When I looked at him again, really looked, I realized he was translucent. I could see the brick wall behind him through his body. "Have a good day, Marcus," he said, even though I'd never told him my name. "Try not to die today." 11:43. 4 minutes past the deadline. I was alive. The video was wrong. I turned the corner onto Broadway, the Sentinel Hotel just 2 blocks away. I could see the sign. Almost there, almost safe. That's when I saw the crowd. People were gathered at the intersection of Broadway and Pine, phones out, recording something. An accident. My blood went cold, but I kept walking. It wasn't me. Couldn't be me. I was here, alive, breathing. As I got closer, I heard someone say, "Did you see that guy? He just walked right into traffic, like he didn't even see the truck." "What guy?" someone else asked. "I don't know. He was wearing a green jacket. It happened so fast." I looked down at my blue sweater. Safe. Different clothes. Different person. Not me. But then I saw him, standing on the opposite corner, staring straight at me. He was wearing my green Columbia jacket, my khakis, my glasses, my face. He smiled and checked his phone. The same nervous gesture. The same middle finger pushing up the glasses. The same slight inward turn of the left foot. The countdown timer on the crosswalk showed 3 seconds. he stepped into the street. The delivery truck came from the left, running the red light just like in the video, but he didn't look, didn't react, just kept walking, eyes locked on mine until the moment of impact. The sound, God, the sound is something I'll never forget. The screaming, the sirens, the chaos, but underneath it all I heard something else, a whisper, maybe my imagination, maybe not. Your turn. But here's what really terrified me. The crowd didn't react like people witnessing a death should. They filmed it, yes, but their expressions were bored, like they'd seen this exact same thing before, multiple times. One woman even yawned while recording. A police officer arrived within seconds, almost like he'd been waiting nearby. He looked directly at me across the crowd and nodded, as if confirming something. Then he began directing traffic around but there was no body, no blood, no sign that anything had happened. The crowd dispersed as if on cue, walking away while still staring at their phones, watching the footage they'd just captured. But when I looked over their shoulders, their screens were blank. No video, no photos, nothing. I ran, pushed through the crowd, past the sentinel, kept running until my lungs burned and my legs gave out. Found myself in a park I didn't recognize, collapsed on a bench, sobbing and shaking. My phone rang. Janet. Marcus, where are you? The Peterson team is waiting. There was an accident. At Broadway and Pine, someone got hit by a truck. What? When? We didn't hear anything. Just now. 15 minutes ago. There's a huge crowd. Police. Ambulances. Silence, then, Marcus, I'm looking at the traffic cams right now. Broadway and Pine is clear. There's no accident. Are you okay? Are you having some kind of episode? I pulled up local news on my phone. Nothing. Twitter. Nothing. Reddit. Nothing. No accident. No crowd. No body. But I knew what I'd seen. Who I'd seen. And then I noticed something that made everything worse. The park I was sitting in. It was the same park from my childhood. The one where I'd broken my arm falling from the monkey bars when I was 8. The one that had been torn down 15 years ago to make room for a shopping mall. Yet here I was, sitting on the exact same bench where my mother had comforted me after the accident. The same bench where she died of a heart attack 3 years later while feeding ducks with me. The ducks were still there. The same ducks, including the one with the distinctive white patch on its head that I'd named Patches. The one that had died of old age a decade ago. I made it to the Sentinel an hour late. Gave the presentation in a daze. Somehow landed the account. Janet was thrilled. The Peterson team loved it. Everyone celebrated. But all I could think about was that smile, that knowing look, that whisper. Your turn. It's been 3 days since Tuesday, 3 days since I watched myself die, or didn't watch myself die. I honestly don't know anymore. I've been searching obsessively for any trace of that video, the original link, the Reddit thread, the username that messaged me. Nothing exists. It's like it was all erased, or like it never existed at all. But the nightmares are real. Every night I see him, the other me, standing on that corner, smiling, stepping into traffic. And every night he whispers something different. Your turn. 7 days. Next Tuesday. Yesterday, I found something that made everything worse. My laptop's browser history showed sites I'd never visited. Forum posts I'd never read. All dated next week. Future dates. November 20th, 21st, 22nd. The posts were about me. People discussing my death. Not the traffic accident. Something different. Something worse. Did anyone else see the stream? How is this legal? Someone must have saved it before it got taken down. Marcus Chen knew it was coming. He tried to warn people. Each post described a different death. Drowning. Falling, fire. Disease, accident, murder, Suicide. All dated November 26th, next Tuesday. 7 days from the first Tuesday. I've started seeing him everywhere now, the other me, in reflections, in crowds, always watching, always smiling. Sometimes he's wearing different clothes, sometimes he's injured, limping, bleeding, broken, but always that same knowing smile. The strangest part is how others react to him. They don't seem to see him at all. I'll point him out to passers-by, but they look right through him. Or worse, they look at me like I'm the one who doesn't exist. Yesterday, I was at the grocery store when I saw him in the produce section. He was examining apples, the same way I do, turning them over to check for bruises. I approached him slowly, my heart pounding. "Who are you?" I whispered. He looked up and smiled. Up close, I could see he was different from me. Older, yes, but also hollowed out. Like something essential had been carved away from inside him. "I'm you," he said simply. "From next Tuesday, and the Tuesday after that, and the Tuesday after that." "That's impossible." "Is it? You've seen the video. You know what's coming. What's been coming, what will always come." Other shoppers moved around us like we were invisible. A woman reached right through him to grab a bag of oranges. "How many times?" I asked. He tilted his head, counting silently. "This will be 57 or 58. I lose track after the first year." "A year?" "Oh, Marcus." Sweet, naive Marcus. "Did you think this was new? Did you think you were the first version of yourself to see that video, to try to prevent it, to fail?" The fluorescent lights above us flickered, and for a moment I could see others, dozens of them. All me, but from different Tuesdays. Different deaths, different failures. They stood in every aisle, at every register, watching me with expressions of pity and exhaustion. "We've all tried," one of them said. He was missing an arm, probably from the death by machinery I'd read about in one of the forum posts. "Every possible approach," said another, this one with burn scars covering half his face. "Different routes, different times, different clothes," added a third, whose neck was bent at an unnatural angle. "Nothing works," they said in unison. "Because this isn't about preventing death, Marcus. This is about accepting it." "But I'm alive," I protested. "I'm standing here talking to you." They all laughed, a sound like wind through a graveyard. "Are you?" asked the original, the one from next Tuesday. "Or are you just remembering being alive? Are you experiencing this moment, or are you watching a recording of it? When did you last eat something and actually taste it? When did you last sleep without dreaming of that intersection?" I tried to remember. I couldn't. "The video isn't a prediction," he continued. "It's a memory, your memory, from the first time you died. Every Tuesday since then has been an echo, a loop, a desperate attempt by what's left of your consciousness to find a way out. But the people at work, my life, the presentation, props, background noise, your mind creating a familiar environment while it processes the trauma of death. Haven't you noticed how shallow it all feels? How everyone seems to be reading from a script?" I had noticed. Conversations that felt rehearsed, interactions that seemed predetermined, life that felt more like a simulation than reality. So, what happens now? "Now?" He smiled, that terrible knowing smile. "Now, you keep trying. Because that's what you do, that's what we all do. We try to prevent it, over and over and over, never realizing that the trying is what keeps us trapped." "Then how do I escape?" "You don't," said the burned version of me. "None of us have. We just add our voices to the chorus, trying to warn the next version of ourselves. But maybe," said the one with the broken neck, "maybe if enough of us exist at once, if enough versions of Marcus are aware of the loop, maybe we can break it," finished the original. "Or maybe we just make it worse. They began to fade as the store's closing announcement played over the speakers. One by one, they disappeared, leaving only whispered warnings. Trust no one, especially yourself. The video always changes. Death is the only constant. See you next Tuesday. I tried to tell my roommate, Derek. Showed him the browser history, but when I pulled it up, it was normal. Just regular sites, regular dates. He thinks I'm having a breakdown. Maybe I am. This morning, I woke up to find a video file on my desktop. 43 seconds. Same length as the original, but this one was different. This one showed me in my apartment, in my bedroom, recording this very message. The timestamp read November 26, 2024, 11:47 p.m. In the video, I'm sitting exactly where I'm sitting now, wearing exactly what I'm wearing now. But I'm not alone. There's someone behind me, just out of focus, just out of frame, moving closer. I know I should run, leave the city, leave the state, but every story I've read says the same thing. You can't run from fate. The harder you try to avoid it, the worse it becomes. So I'm posting this, uploading it, sharing it, because maybe if enough people see it, if enough people know, something will change. Maybe the pattern will break. Or maybe this is exactly what's supposed to happen. Maybe you watching this right now is part of it. Maybe you've already seen the next video, the one that hasn't been recorded yet, the one where wait, there's someone at my door. It's 11:44 p.m., 3 minutes before the timestamp. It's me. I can see him through the peephole. The other me. He's holding a camera. He's still smiling. He's knocking now. Soft. Patient. Like he has all the time in the world. Because he does, doesn't he? He's already lived through this. He knows how it ends. The knocking stopped. My phone just buzzed. A notification. A DM from throwaway 73829. Check the closet. I don't want to look, but I can hear breathing that isn't mine. From behind the closet door. Slow. Steady. Waiting. The timestamp on my computer just hit 11:47 p.m. The closet door is opening. He's still smiling. He looks exactly like me, but his eyes are older. Tired. Like he's done this so many times before. He's speaking now, not whispering. Clear as day, every Tuesday, Marcus. Every Tuesday you die. And every Tuesday you wake up on Wednesday thinking you survived. But you didn't, you never do. The video isn't a prediction. It's a memory, your memory, from last week, and the week before, and the week before that. You've been dead for months, Marcus. You just keep forgetting. But don't worry. In 7 days you'll see another video, another death, another Tuesday, and you'll try to prevent it. You always do. That's what makes it so perfect. The only way to break the cycle is to accept it, to walk into that traffic willingly, to choose your death instead of running from it. But you won't, you never do, because you're too afraid. See you next Tuesday, Marcus. See you every Tuesday. He's reaching for the camera now. His hand is covering the lens. The last thing I'm recording is his smile, my smile, our smile. But before the camera goes dark, I see something that changes everything. Behind him, in the darkness of the closet, are the others. All the versions of me who've lived through this moment before. They're not gone. They're not memories. They're all here, all now, all trapped in this endless Tuesday loop. And they're all reaching for me, not to harm me, to pull me in, to make me part of their eternal moment, their eternal death, their eternal Tuesday. The camera cuts to black, but I can still hear their whispers. Welcome to forever, Marcus. Welcome to Tuesday. Welcome home. If you're watching this, if you've made it this far, check your notifications, check your DMs, check for videos dated a week from now. And whatever you do, don't try to prevent it. Just accept it. Or you'll end up like me, like all of me, dying every Tuesday, forever. The video ends here, but before you go, before you click away, check your browser history. Check for dates that haven't happened yet. Check for posts you haven't made yet. And if you find them, if you see your name, remember what Marcus learned too late. Some deaths aren't endings, they're loops. And once you see your own, you're already in one. So tell me, what day of the week is it for you? And have you checked your notifications lately? Because I bet you have a message waiting. From someone who looks exactly like you. Someone who's been waiting to meet you. Someone who wants to show you a video, a 43-second video, of next Tuesday. Sweet dreams. See you soon. See you every Tuesday.